Thank you all for attending. Just to introduce myself, I'm Amanda Shee. I'm one of the planners for the American Medical Women's Association meeting. So I'm a program co-director for the last 6 years-ish. And I am also a critical care fellow at Mass General and finished my anesthesia residency at Mass General. But before that, I went to a brand new medical school, Oakland University William Beaumont, as part of the first class. In that medical school, I had a lot of people that asked me about, hey, what's it like being at a new med school? You know, what kind of curriculum are you doing? What is this integrated curriculum? Like, tell me about it. And so I started writing about it. And that's how I started my social media journey. I started a blog in 2011, and I was a lot more prolific back in 2011. Every day I wrote something. And I felt like I connected with the community really well with that. A lot of pre-meds, a lot of medical students going through a similar thing. At that time, I was in a long-distance relationship. I put my heart out there, put my heart on my sleeve, and really shared about kind of the frustrations of being a medical student and also being in a long-distance relationship, things like that. So I built this great community, and I felt like I got a lot out of that. And over time, have now been able to build my social media presence and my network. And back then, a lot of people had actually warned me. So my advisor, my mentor as a medical student, she sat me down one time and she said, I'm really worried about you. And I was like, what do you mean? Why? What's going on? And she said, you are putting yourself out there too much. That is dangerous. And I was like, oh, okay. And I actually had to think twice about it. I really did. I took some time to think, is this what I want to do? Do I want to share my whole life out there? Do I want to be that public about this? And what does that mean for my career? You have to remember, as either physicians, future physicians, healthcare professionals in any realm, your presence and your kind of identity online shapes oftentimes what opportunities you will get in the future, right? So if you paint yourself in a certain light, it may or may not help you get certain opportunities. So that being said, we've come a long way. Now we have the millennial generation. They've grown up doing this all day, right? So it's different. It's a different world. And I think that we need to kind of get everyone together on the same page. So we're going to do this really kind of basic overview. This is more on the lines of online professional identity first. And then towards the second half, I wanted to introduce my friends since they're all here. Dr. Amita Kundra, she's up here. She's an anesthesiologist here in New York. And she is on Instagram. And we are Instagram buddies that are finally meeting in real life. Dr. Joni Ye. She is one of the founders of Girl Med Media, very active on Twitter, has an incredible following. And then Miss Alyssa Brown, who is an MWIA ambassador, a medical student, and also the runner of our AMWA Doctors Instagram account. They're here to kind of help us get some one-on-one and kind of more workshop, hands-on type experience. You can ask more specific questions. Ready to get started? Yes. Okay. So let's go to the next thing. So today, this is what we're talking about. We're all here for this, right? Social media, right? On your phone? Okay. So my disclaimer for the day, I will not be offended if you guys have your phones out and you're looking down at it and you're taking notes and things like that. That is totally okay. I encourage it. If you have a Twitter account, you have an Instagram account, feel free, pop on there, put some tweets out there. And if you don't and you want to get onto one of these accounts, then feel free to start downloading the app now. Last thing, in true social media fashion, I have my disclaimer saying that what I'm talking about right now, these are my opinions. So I am an AMWA board member. This is not AMWA's opinion. I am a Mass General employee, not their opinion. These are my opinions. So I just want to make that clear. And as you guys embark on your social media journey, I want to make sure that you guys also know that disclaimers are very important. You do not want to be held liable for representing your institution when you don't. So. Okay, so these footsteps represent the digital footprint that everyone has. Who's heard of a digital footprint before? Good, I'm glad. So we're gonna delve into this world of the digital footprint. So who's used or heard of Kevin MD? Yes? Do we all love Kevin MD? Kevin Fo's amazing, right? So he wrote this book in 2013, and he actually said when he published this book, he's like, when it was published, it was already outdated, right? Any book on social media is gonna be outdated the moment it's published. But I love this quote because I think for all healthcare professionals, this is an important statement. So I'm just gonna take this moment to read it out to you. So whether you know it or not, doctors have an online presence. So what does that online presence mean? So it means a lot of things. For example, if you are a physician in the United States, you have an NPI number, and that means that you are automatically connected to some profile that's made of you, regardless of if you made it, if you've control. You don't have control over that. It just appears on the internet. So that means you exist online. Even if you don't want to, you exist online. So everything you do professionally creates a digital footprint. So that means if you put something, we'll do questions at the end, but if you put anything out there, you write a quick blog post, things like that, that will stay there. So if you're involved in social media, that means that you're contributing to your online reputation. So this is the big argument I'm going to make for everyone, for people who are on social media, who aren't, especially for people who are not on social media, that by just being passive, you are not guiding the conversation about you and about what you stand for. So if you're not online, your online reputation is being written for you. There's a conversation taking place about you online, but unfortunately, you may not be included in it. So the first thing, and if you've gone to any social media sessions or anything about online reputation, is this. You take a minute and you search for yourself online. So if you have your devices on there now, I actually want you to do it right now. I want you to also be aware of the fact that you should be in incognito mode or private browsing mode. Because guess what? Google has recorded the things that you've searched for. So if you go into a private browsing mode, usually it's the top right corner, there's a settings, and it'll say open private browser or open like incognito. That's what Google Chrome says. It's easier on a computer, but on a computer you can do it that way. Right now you can just use whatever browser and do it. But I just want you to be aware that when you search for your name under your own Google presence, like if you're signed into Google, for example, or you're signed into Firefox, it remembers what you've searched for before, so it'll show you things that it thinks you want to see, not the things that a stranger would see. So just remember that when you're searching for yourself, it may show you one thing in one type of browser, and it may show you another thing in another type of browser. So it's important to make sure you see what is written about you and what's out there about you. So we're going to jump into this next designation of active versus passive presence. So I Googled myself. I actually have an alert on Google for my name so that I'm aware of what gets posted about me. In fact, when I first started Googling myself, under Google Images, there was actually like an explicit photo that wasn't mine that was attached to my name, and I felt really awkward because I was like, this is a very inappropriate photo and it's not me. There's also, now I know, an Amanda XI in Hong Kong who is a lawyer. So I'm glad that she's professional and her presence is good too. So that being said, when you search Amanda XI, despite the fact that there is a lawyer in Hong Kong with the same name, I am at the top. So this is in a private browser, and you can see the first thing that shows up is my personal website, because Google likes to rank things like your name or older presences higher. That means I've been able, when I started my blog, there was actually another blogger that said Queen Amanda XI, they beat me every time. But now that I've had this blog for 8 years, I have now toppled anyone else on the search. So from this, all you can see here, so all four of these things, they're under my control. The first two things are my personal blog and my personal website. The third thing is LinkedIn, which, by the way, very highly, highly ranked, very highly underutilized by the medical community too. As an engineer, as an undergrad, everyone used LinkedIn. It's how people connected. And I think physicians should take advantage of LinkedIn as a professional network and as a way to get your CV out there easily. It also, like I said, it ranks really high, so it's really easy for you to be found and for opportunities that you might want to come finding you. You also get a lot of spam on LinkedIn now too, so my apologies in advance. And then the last thing on there is my American Medical Women's Association profile, and lucky me, I run the website in terms of this stuff, so I can control that too. So this is an active presence. I control all four of these links. I can change them, I can edit them however I want. But if you scroll down on that page, this one, write a review on vitals.com. I don't have control of that. In fact, it still says Detroit, Michigan, where I was an intern 4 years ago. So clearly it's outdated as well. But as a physician, everyone has some passive presence. even in foreign countries. I actually Googled, Sissy Yu was our, what's it called? She was one of our session leaders, and I looked her up, and even in Hong Kong, they have something like this. So every country has some version of this kind of like log of physicians or some physician profiles that are publicly available that you can search for. So just be aware of that and take the time to see, are the things that you control up on top, or are they getting buried somewhere else under, some of our health grades or terrible reviews from patients that might have been disgruntled long, long ago. So just to review again, to summarize things, an active presence is under your control. If you make your own website, even if you get a free website, even that blogspot.com ending, which is how I started, totally fine, as long as you're controlling it and making your own presence and your own identity for yourself. And then it's a deliberate practice of what you want to show the world about what you care for or what you practice. And then passive is what other people write about you. So even like you could argue news articles and things like that, those are also passive because they might take a quote, but what if they misquote you? What if they misunderstood what you meant? So sometimes those things are actually kind of out of your control as well. So the next part, you have to think. When you do this work, you really have to be thoughtful. The most important thing too about getting online, this is my caution to you guys, is that if you're feeling emotional, if you want to punch someone because you had a frustrating day, things were inefficient. For example, when I'm in the OR and I'm like, we've been waiting for 2 hours for turnover, I'm the anesthesiologist, and you're still saying it's an anesthesia delay? What is going on here? This is not my fault. I'm not going to go online on my Facebook and say, oh my God, how ridiculous this is. Why are we so delayed? Or, oh my God, this patient said I was a nurse and I said I was the physician. These are things that need to stay inside. Keep them inside. Keep them among colleague conversations, one-on-one, not on a big level. Just remember, for example, this is my little case study of it. There was a pediatric anesthesiologist at the University of Colorado who said some rather inappropriate things about our former First Lady. And at the end of the day, everyone is entitled to their opinion of whoever, public figures, whatever. You are entitled to those opinions. But if you post it on your Facebook, you automatically make it public. Even if you think your privacy settings are only to 2 people, those 2 people can take a screenshot and send them to whoever. So just remember that. Just remember that. And this anesthesiologist got forced to resign, so just so you know kind of what ended up happening after that. So again, my main point, if you're about to post something, stop and think before you hit submit. These are a list of things that you want to be considerate of. Bad language, obviously HIPAA in the US. And remember, HIPAA is now something that is you have to be really careful. So for example, on Instagram, I see some people posting stories while they're intra-op, like live with a patient. Don't do that, okay? Don't do that. If your hospital sees that, you will be fired. That is breaking the law. You are caring for a patient. You are not building your Instagram presence by posting about the stable vital signs because you're bored and it's cold in the OR. Yes, I have been there. I've been an anesthesiologist at the bedside during rock stable vitals, and it's cold and it's boring, but I don't get my phone out and start posting about it. Okay, so just some things to think about. Other things, anytime you are on campus on your healthcare organizations, you need to be aware of what the rules are. There are some organizations that say if you take a photo on campus, that it is their property. It is not your property. It is not for you to share. They can terminate you if you do not know about these rules and violate them by accident. That is, especially in certain institutions, that is something that they take very seriously. Okay, their media department. And it's incredible because we've come a long way. When I started medical school, I did a project on checking social media policies for medical schools. Terry Kind, back in 2010, published about this. Only 10% of medical schools had anything written explicitly about social media. 2 years later, it was 60% when I looked it up. And now I'm pretty sure it's 100% of institutions have some mention of social media because it is so ubiquitous. Other things, right? So it's kind of like, you know it when you see it. If it looks like bad behavior, it feels like bad behavior, it probably was bad behavior and is probably unprofessional. So if you say you want to write something, you're wondering if, is this kind of too, too vulgar in some way, or is this kind of too intense to post? Just put it away in a draft somewhere, hide it for a bit, come back to it a day later, come back to it a week later, and then decide whether that is appropriate. So these are obvious things. Oh, and snake oil claims. Snake oil, curing cancer, don't do that. I'm just going to put that out there. So in terms of a checklist, how do you know, or how do you kind of have some rules for using social media safely and appropriately in this digital era? Well, John M. did a great job. So he actually posts on Medscape now. He has a column. He's a cardiologist, electrophysiologist, and he wrote these up he actually initially wrote this in 2013. But I love these rules, right? So don't be scared. We talked about emotions too. Don't post when you're emotional. And also, the other big thing is you guys are representing the healthcare profession. You guys are a reputable source of information. You should be contributing to the internet. When I look up labor epidurals, the first thing I see are the blogs that say that you shouldn't get an epidural. And that pains me. That really impacts patient care. That impacts when they come into the hospital and I need to educate them about why they need a general anesthetic, which is more dangerous for most pregnant patients because they're refusing an epidural, and how their procedure or their labor may change dramatically because they're too scared of an epidural because they read a blog entry from somewhere that did not discuss the data on a specific thing or a specific medical condition. Right? So it is important. I know that it's so hard because we don't have time, but it's so important for you guys to be contributing to the internet to provide accurate, up-to-date, evidence-based medicine. Okay? Obviously, don't violate HIPAA, so don't identify patients. And just be careful, too. Even saying, man, I had such a tough patient today. Guess what? They know who you are. If they look at the date that you posted that, they could figure out if it was them, or maybe you weren't talking about them, and now they suddenly feel like you are. These things, they matter. If the other thing, too, is you'll find that some practices, especially private practices, more aesthetics, dermatology, plastic surgery, those kind of accounts, they actually ask for permission from their patients, whether they can post about them. And oftentimes there's a pretty nice legal language and paperwork you can have your patients sign. So if you do have a private practice account and you want to talk about those kind of success stories of your patients, that's a good way of just making sure that you cover your bases and that you engage with your patients and that they feel like they're included in the whole conversation when you're writing about them. And I would say that actually is a really nice way to build relationships with your patients too, by saying I want to feature you as one of my success stories, or I want to feature you because this has been so important to me. And the other big things I want to say too is that it's just so important to be positive. Be positive. Even if you're having a bad day, how can you spin it so that there was something you could say that you learned from that day? How do you take a lesson from something that frustrated you and post that part? So that way you can kind of just always maintain this positivity. When you're engaging with other people, commenting, reposting, things like that, post something positive about it. Post something in response that will uplift them, because at the end of the day, this is a community and you want to lift each other up. That's what we're here for, right? We want to lift each other up. Okay, so the big question, why bother, right? Have I convinced some of you guys that, or maybe you guys are already here because you're self-selecting and you want to be part of it. I don't know, what do you think? Yes, no, maybe? Some, maybe? Okay, so for you guys as women physicians or soon-to-be women physicians, Dr. Shilcutt is an anesthesiologist in Nebraska, and Dr. Silver is a PM&R physician at Harvard. And they wrote this New England Journal article. It is an op-ed, so take it as you will. But I love this summary. So I'm going to read it again, too. So we believe that virtual communities may offer women physicians additional coping mechanisms, provide new avenues for sharing information, and perhaps reduce stigma associated with sexual harassment, burnout, and workplace culture by allowing experience to be shared and validated, perhaps lessening social isolation and feelings of loneliness or even self-blame. So if you had that opportunity, if you felt like there was an uncomfortable experience in the culture of your hospital, so for example, when I'm in the ORs, there's kind of an old boys club feel in the OR, right? That still exists, that's still pervasive, but it's almost not accepted as something that exists because people don't talk about it. And there aren't enough women in that situation to really say anything. And allowing us a voice online allows us to bring that up, to bring it to people's attention. Like how Time's Up Healthcare is getting out there and saying, this is a problem, and this is a problem we need to address. So, 1 + 1 = 3, right? No? Oh, okay, great. Just making sure we're still awake here. So as I mentioned earlier, reasons why we should get on social media. We need to dispel those myths about snake oil curing cancer. We need to tear down those supplements that don't make sense. Yes, alternative medicine has a place. There's data to support certain alternative medicine practices. But to have a patient come to you and decline standard of care because they read something online from some maybe plus or minus reputable source, it's not comfortable. It feels ethically wrong. So we need to be out there to make sure we dispel those myths. As I've mentioned before, we need to educate the public. So when you put your voice out there, when you write a blog entry and you post it on there and it becomes available on Google, people will find it. Over time, it builds its presence and more people read it, so you're able to actually have more of a voice than if you're one-on-one with a patient. Right? Even if you only have 100 page views, that means 100 people looked at that and maybe even took in a couple sentences that may change their life or their way that they look at something. And that's an impact. This conference and AMWA conferences always reminds me that there are pre-meds out there looking for mentors. They're looking for people to inspire them to keep going. There are residents, I just finished residency, that I need to be reminded that there is light at the end of the tunnel. There are attendees out there that are happy. Residency is a time-limited thing, and that's something that I love about this too. So online, I've been able to reach out to, and people reach out to me, pre-meds, medical students, aspiring anesthesiologists, high school students, they've reached out, and they get really excited to know that there's someone out there that they can relate to, that on a different level they get advice from, and that they can kind of feel like they're being lifted and helped through the journey. If you guys, especially people more recently applying to medical school, it's hard. It is so hard. You have to have perfect scores. You have to have every single society as the president and leader. It feels like you have to do everything in order to get in. So I will say, I feel like it's gotten harder, and it's really nice for those of the younger generation who are aspiring to be physicians to have a role model or to have someone to reach out to. Again, I've reminded people, the community. So we have, with Amita, we have a great community. Girl Med Media fostered an incredible community on Twitter. So we have some really great areas and places and people and networks that we can reach out to through social media. And finally, having a voice. Right? So you do have a voice, you have a lot to say, you have experiences, and you have knowledge to share, and it's so important that you use that voice online. And then career advancement. So I don't do a lot of research, actually, but I did some work on social media, and I've been able to give talks on social media. I've been able to actually have people reach out to me for opportunities to learn about things, to work on projects. I've been able to meet so many great people that have helped me learn about different career avenues that I can take. And so even though it seems like, what's the point of all this? I assure you that there's something that you can get out of it. So if you, for example, are very passionate about a specific topic, you write about it, you kind of educate the public, engage in that community, you might find that someone comes to you and says, what do you think of trying to start this? Or what about this idea? It sounds like a great idea. And you could get going with something new by just doing that. So, you guys ready to dive in? So what I wanted to do is take each corner. So I'll stay here, and then maybe either Joni or Amita, you could take that corner, and then Alyssa, you can stay in that corner. So you guys can come to us. You can ask specific questions. That's where we're at right now. And we can go from there. But before we get started on that, I'll take 5 minutes for questions. Okay. Yes.
Yeah, I want to ask you about blogging.
Yes.
Okay, so I obviously didn't grow up with the social media generation, but if we want to start, so what I've done is I've had somebody assist me in creating a website of my own name,
Yep.
drjoantucker.com, and then I can write on my area of expertise, which is mental health disability.
Yeah.
And returning people to work. That's
Absolutely.
my thing,
Yep.
occupational mental health. So is that the best forum for, like, I'm just learning now how to write a blog and how to post it, like that's where I'm at in the journey.
Absolutely.
But is that the best way to do it, is through your own individual website, or you said like you just went to blog.com?
So that is a great question. For those of you guys that may be aspiring to be bloggers or to disseminate information through a blog format, there's a couple different platforms by which you can start things. When I started my blog in 2011, there weren't a lot of kind of big community blogs that will help promote you from their end using their network. So I started it on my own. Now, if I was trying to get into this sphere, I would pick another platform. So for example, if you have a really great entry that you spent a couple hours on, right? Because it takes time to write it in an articulate manner, make sure there's no typos, and also to have appropriate references and evidence base in there. You can actually post it on things like KevinMD, right? So that's what I'm trying to get at, is you can use So KevinMD.com is actually a community blog where he will accept submissions to this very large blog with high page views, so that he'll do all the marketing for you. So you submit the entry you've already written on your blog to his blog. He will post it. He will put it on his Twitter, on his Facebook. So the feed already goes to all the followers that he has, which is like hundreds of thousands, and then you will be linked at the bottom because it says this was originally published here. So that drives traffic to your site. So that is one approach. You can go down that route. Doximity is another now physician-based online networking group, and you can submit.
Can you spell it?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Do you have a slide on it or something?
I can actually just write some thoughts down on the computer in terms of specific places that you can go to start kind of posting your own material and making sure if you link it back to your own site that that's how you get the traffic to get going. And every time you get linked, your website gets linked, Google considers that to be a verified or more of a accurate or higher ranked website overall. So if you have more links out there, people are linking to you, it's more reputable in Google's algorithm. So it helps your website kind of build its presence. Yeah.
Okay. And if you're not writing on a topic per se, because like there's one way to do it is, I mean, on a clinical topic, does antidepressants cause blah, 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 or something like that? But what if you're doing more of a case-based, which is my preference to write? It's more of a narrative piece, like patient-centered narrative piece where there's sort of some take-home messages, but it wouldn't, do you know what I'm saying? It's more of a narrative piece.
So
that somebody who's struggling with a mental health workplace issue would benefit from, but it doesn't have the,
So it depends who your audience is. That's the other thing I just want to highlight. So Doximity and KevinMD have more of a physician and healthcare professional audience. If your audience is to reach patients, you want to reach out to the patient advocacy groups and look for those types of platforms to try to reach out to them. The other kind of great way to do that too is you can, on LinkedIn, you can actually start posting on there as a blog type format. And through LinkedIn, you can connect with different community advocacy groups or patient groups that would be interested in your material. And yes. And Medium is a great one too for.
You're gonna have to write these down or put it somewhere where we use old technology.
If you guys are on Facebook, there's a female physician entrepreneur group that is actually really helpful for people who want to build websites. I found it helpful. I know Joni's on it, and we can, if you come see me, I can add you to the group.
Yeah, or if you could at the end just post.
We'll do some. I'll do some summary stuff here. Yeah.
Name like 10 resources.
Female
I can't do it on my phone.
Yeah. Okay. Next question.
Yes.
I saw your hand up earlier. Okay. Go ahead.
I just read an article on Doximity that actually made me really concerned about social media and sharing personal health information, but sharing statistics or sharing pieces about medical information. Someone apparently in aired version, and then a anti-circumcision group took it up and actually eventually reported her to the medical board, and they didn't drop the claim immediately, even though she had never seen this patient. She had only interacted with them on Twitter, and they actually started pursuing the complaint. And so I'm wondering, like, what sort of protections are there moving forward for social media and making medical claims on social media as a physician that would prevent that from happening for one of us in this room?
So I do want to add to the caution that the bullying on social media has really taken off. There are a lot of anti-X, Y, or Z medical thing groups out there that have more time. I hate to say it that way, but they have more time to get their whole cohort to attack a specific person or specific claim that's put out online, even if it is factual and it is evidence-based. So the main thing is, again, kind of like before you post something, you really have to think about how it's going to be perceived, even by the anti-XYZ group. You know, what could they do to attack this statement? What types of things are you saying that they can that could start building some rage into some way? And then see if you can kind of redefine that area, in order to protect yourself. At the end of the day, if you're going to participate online, you have to have a thick skin, because people are going to say things that you're like, this is absolutely ludicrous. But it hurts. It's hard not to take that personally when someone is attacking you. But you have to recognize that there are also physician communities. So like SoMeDocs is a physician community on Facebook, for example. Physician entrepreneurs online. There's different groups, so we can kind of leverage ourselves and our groups to help each other when we get bullied and attacked. But I will say, there aren't legal protections out there for things like these groups attacking and them mounting a claim to the state medical board. It's scary. I know that. It is very scary. But I do think that it is important to at least engage, at least watch what's out there. You don't have to participate, you don't have to contribute necessarily, but step one is to follow specific groups, see what they're saying. Follow those anti-XYZ groups, see what they're saying, because those are the things that people are reading. So it's important for us to be aware of that and not to silo ourselves into our own groups, per se. I wish I had a better answer for like, this is how you protect yourself, here's the insurance policy. It doesn't exist yet.
General, not on that specific person.
Yes.
Because now people have been sued for giving advice when they, even if they don't have a patient-physician relationship, you can still be medically legally liable.
Yeah.
So it's better to say, circumcision. You're not going to say your 2-month-old should da 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 da, but you could say in general, circumcision occurs at such and such a time, and you can provide links to that article. But just be careful about giving anybody advice.
Yes.
For a personal patient.
Yes, absolutely. That's something I definitely want to echo. Do not provide medical advice. I all the time have people being like, I'm going to get this surgery. What kind of anesthesia should I have? I'm like, I don't know, because I don't know you and you're not my patient. So I'm sorry, but you need to ask your physician. So-and-so has pain. I'm like, well, then you need to go to the ED or be evaluated by a physician in person. I am not, that is another disclaimer line of, you don't provide medical advice. Your purpose there is to educate general topics, but not medical advice. Okay, someone from this side. We'll start up in front here.
I have a question about when you're talking about having a voice in the Old Boys Club and support someone else is in a similar situation to you as a physician, and the digital footprint. If an employer is looking at you for a job, do they have access even to your secret groups and what you said on secret groups, like say physicians mom?
You should assume everything you post, even in those private groups, is publicly available because they probably know someone that's in that group.
So then you feel like you really can't say anything, even just to support someone. Because I saw something on, it was Kevin MD one time. It was a female ER doc, and I'm an ER doc, and she had 3 articles, and I was like, these are awesome. This is exactly what I've been telling my husband, who's a doc, who doesn't get the female doc thing, issues, and it was awesome. I felt so happy that she wrote about these things. And the 4th article I went to read, she said, I got slapped on the wrist by my employer for being too candid. It wasn't about patient stuff. It was about.
So
female
here's the
issues in
thing, this is
workplace.
a great topic too, because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, you know how I put that disclaimer that I don't represent my institution? I'm very cognizant of what I say about the culture of my institution publicly, because my institution's reputation is on the line. If I say something about the Old Boys Club on, you know, my page, and I say, oh my God, it's so non-inclusive and blah, 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 and this problem, that problem, then automatically people are gonna know, because I work for this institution, that that is the place that I'm at, and that tarnishes their reputation. So it is vital that if you are posting something publicly, or even in Physician Mom Group, or you know any of these other private Facebook groups, that there's a positive spin to whatever you say, right? So you know there are some challenges in our institution with X, Y, and Z, or where I work with X, Y, and Z. However, you know some things that I think I'm seeing that are improving are X, Y, and Z, or some things that I've seen that have really helped are X, Y, and Z, because there has to be some upshot. There has to be a positive spin on whatever you say, or just don't say anything about your institution at all. Like I only say the positive things on my institution, especially my residency program, all of that. They all know, they all follow me, they all see it. So I do make it very clear and I try to make a point to make sure that I only post the more positive things. And the other things that are more personal are the things that I'll say on, you know, the challenges. I'll use the more personal anecdotes for that and not institution-based things. So, yeah.
And one more quick part of that. I know an instance where there is a business website that actually is a law firm, and they have information on their website about a particular case. It's completely incorrect and not medically sound, and it's on their website about a particular physician. And are they allowed to post inaccurate medical information and things that are not true, even as a business?
Any business can do anything, right? There are businesses out there selling snake oil to cure cancer. They literally say, this will cure your cancer. They make money off of that. A business can do whatever they want. This is a free market. They can say whatever they want. This is the marketing claims. Remember when cigarettes were good for you, right? Like, they're not. We know that, but that is a marketing ploy, and that is something that is not regulated in terms
Even
of
if it's about a particular physician, it can't be considered slander.
Remember, I mean, that physician can then themselves try to sue them, because that is, to them, potentially slander. But from the general public, you have to be aware that that's out there, and that, I hate to say it, but most of the time, like, anything you read, you kind of have to think twice about whether it's accurate or factual about anyone, right? We've seen how media has evolved in certain ways as a result. But thank you for that. Yep.
So I post on behalf of my state's individual organization.
Yeah.
And my question is just going forward, what's the best platform to reach as many people as possible so that we can increase our membership? So we've got a website, we've got Facebook page, and we've got Twitter. But should we be expanding to other platforms, or should we be focusing most of our time on like trying to increase leadership on one platform? Like what's your advice?
I love that question, because it's something that
Repeat it, Amanda.
Oh, yeah, of course. So the question is, representing your local organization, how do you leverage social media to like increase your membership and kind of get the word out there about your organization? So I would say number one, MWIA is almost a case study in that. We have recruited some really awesome young individuals that understand the language of social media and are able to use the marketing techniques that are innate to them, that are not necessarily innate to some of our like older community, let's say, or more seasoned physicians. So as a result, you know, they speak the language of social media. There's things like you have to post a photo, right? So people don't engage with words, they engage with photos, feelings, things that invoke an emotion will bring them in. Something that, you know, other things like bringing on people that have a following. So that's why it's great to bring in people like Girl Med Media helped promote MWIA. So we were able to actually have some of their speakers come here as part of our program, and really being able to cross-pollinate across organizations. That community that you build ends up lifting everyone up. So really making sure to reach out. So getting some young people on board that are comfortable with that. Also on your end, if you want, like if you have the time and really are committed and excited about it, learning some of the marketing techniques that are out there that are used for businesses but can be applied to nonprofits and other organizations to help promote your vision, what your mission is. Of course. Okay, last question in the back.
When a patient is trying to touch you,
What do you do about that? So let me just say this. Over time, those health grades and Google reviews have evolved a little, and you can claim your profile. So those, like, for example, healthgrades.com is my favorite example because everyone tends to have a profile on there. And any private practice or clinic-based practice, oftentimes there's at least one disgruntled patient that had to wait in your waiting room for like an hour because you were behind. And they go on there like, oh, this is terrible because I had to wait forever. So when you claim your profile, being able to respond in a positive kind of like, I hear you, I acknowledge your frustrations, and I'm sorry type of manner is how businesses, for example, on Yelp, respond to things, right? On Yelp, you can always find a negative review. You can probably find a negative review of this hotel that's like, blah, 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 this was terrible. And immediately after it says the manager of the hotel, I'm so sorry you had this experience. Please reach out because of X, Y, or Z that we can do to help you out. And that makes a difference because if someone sees that, they say, oh, you know, this is something that did not go right, and I, as an organization, I, as my practice, recognize that, and I'm going to work on it, and I'm going to respond to it, and I'm going to address it. And I think that that is all you can really do, is to make sure that you reply in a positive way and show that you're evolving and that you hear them and that you, in some way, are addressing whatever potential or non-existent even issue that patient may have felt. That's kind of the best way you can do it. At the end of the day, every single organization, individual, anyone is up for potential reviews and potential negative press. That's just the reality of where we live right now. And your goal is to just make sure that you take that and you spin it to show that you're improving or you are, you hear them is the main thing.
Amanda, I was just saying, it really makes you stand out because 99.9% of people don't, businesses, everything don't necessarily respond. I mean, you can see that on Yelp. I mean, but the ones that do respond, it just makes you look really good.
Yeah. Okay, why don't we break out into kind of some smaller group and you can,
Clarify something?
yeah.
What do you mean by painting the profile? Is it, you know, I mean, I don't know if the dog means.
Yeah, so when you do that Google search of yourself and you find a profile that's been made of you that you don't have control of, go into that link, and oftentimes you'll find a little link that says, "Is this you?" ? And you can actually click on that link and claim it and say that this is you. So you have control over components of it, so it's more accurate, or you can respond to things, and that's what I meant. This is a newer thing over the last couple years, because in the past they used to never let physicians reply to things or claim their own profile, but now you should take up an opportunity to take control of those things. Yeah, of course. Okay, thank you guys all for coming. Was this helpful?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you all.